Today's topic is one of the most asked questions. How can I make my man more alpha? Hello and welcome to my channel, The Feminine Frame. My name is Natalie. If you haven't been here before, we discuss all things love, femininity, relationships, and yes, even the red pill, and how we women can use that knowledge to our advantage. Today's topic is one of the most asked questions that women have about the red pill. I see this question all the time, and sometimes it's a variation of the same question. How can I make my man more alpha? And sometimes this will come in the form of, actually, how can I make my man more alpha? But sometimes they'll ask it in another way. It'll be, how can I make my man more assertive? How can I make my husband take leadership? How can I make him be more of a decision maker? And what the heart of it is that these women feel that their man is missing some sort of masculine quality, and they want to know, how can I make my husband more masculine? Well, the short answer to this is, you're not going to like it. You can't. Your man has his own free will. You are not going to, nag him into submissively taking the lead. That's not what you would want anyways. Aside from your man having his own free will, you can't do the work for him. He might not be able to embody the qualities to the degree that you want. This isn't a romance novel where he's going to react perfectly in every situation or be able to read your mind. He's a real life person. Not every man is capable of being 100% alpha. Aside from all of that, he might not even want to be alpha or to embody whatever quality you have or do what you want him to do. So the short answer is no, you cannot make somebody be more alpha or insert any other quality. They have their own agency. You can't put in the work for them. They might not even want that. Longer answer to this question, and what you're all really here for is, yes, there are ways, however, that you can help to encourage any latent masculine alpha qualities that might be there that just need a little bit of encouragement. That is going to be the longer answer to this question, is how can you encourage some of these qualities that you desire to come out? We had our one big caveat that you can't make somebody be something. Our second caveat as we go into this is you're going to want to be conscious of yourself and creating covert contracts. And what I mean by that is sometimes we set up an expectation in our head. If I do this, then this will happen. And we want to be very careful, if you're trying any of these tactics, to not create some sort of unsaid expectation that if you do this, then he will be alpha. And if he doesn't react the way that you want him to react, getting upset with him, that would be unrealistic and unfair on your part. So that is our second big caveat as we get into this video that I just want to put at the forefront of your mind. But let's get into the meat of it. The first things that you'll want to consider are there any physical things that are getting in the way of alphaness? I'm putting in quotations. I don't take alpha too seriously here. Are there any physical things standing in the way? This would be things like low testosterone. Now, this is a sensitive topic, but obviously, if a man is low on testosterone, then that is going to affect his drive. If you know that your man has low testosterone, you can encourage him to get on it. He might not want to go on testosterone, and I wouldn't force it, but that's something to consider. If he doesn't know what his numbers are, then you can encourage him, hey, have you had your checkup lately? Have you checked your testosterone lately? This is not something that I would nag about. A lot of men can be sensitive about this. It can feel like you are attacking their manhood. Some men will take it in stride and just go get it done. But some men are going to take it personally. They're going to take it as an insult. So I wouldn't nag about it. But if you think it's a possibility, then it's certainly something to bring up. A second big physical cause that can hinder a man's drive would be weight. We live in a society where most of us have a little bit of extra weight. This is going to affect energy levels. In men, it can affect testosterone. It can affect confidence and just overall health and energy levels. So of course, this is something that if you want your man to be more alpha, then you would carefully want to encourage him to take better care of his health. Now, this is a very tricky, sensitive topic. Just like for women, weight can be a sensitive topic for men. You don't want to be his mother and become like the fridge police, or constantly nag him about working out, or constantly make little digs about his weight. You wouldn't like it if somebody did that to you. You're well aware of what your weight is, so we're not going to want to treat our men that way either. If your man is carrying a few extra pounds, then maybe the first place to start is to look at yourself. If you are also carrying a little bit of extra weight, then start making changes for yourself. Start exercising, start eating healthier. You can invite him to go on walks with you. You could give him a heads up, hey, I'm trying to eat healthier. I'm going to be trying some different recipes. Would you want to try some of these recipes, these healthier recipes with me? That'd be really supportive of me. So that would be the first place, is to go on, don't be a hypocrite if you also have extra pounds to lose. Go ahead and start making changes for yourself before you start trying to change him. Now, if he doesn't want to go on a diet with you, you're not his mother, you can still sometimes cook foods that he enjoys. That being said, I don't think that you need to enable bad habits. If he's big into snacking, you don't need to buy tons of snacks. If he wants to go out and buy those snacks, ultimately that's his choice. I wouldn't harp on him or nag him or give him a hard time about that. But you don't need to necessarily do that for him. I'm going to caveat this a little bit because there is always nuance and such. That's part of what makes this topic so tricky, is because a lot of times us women are in charge of the food, and so we do feel sometimes a little bit of a responsibility to help our men eat healthy. And you can help him by making those healthy dishes, but if he doesn't enjoy them, it kind of puts you in that tricky position. Do I make foods that he enjoys? Do I buy him the snacks? And of course, there is room for nuance and stuff here. If he is on a doctor prescribed diet, then that's something that you would want to adhere to in the meals that you're making. Or if he is already in the category of like my 600-pound life, and you are already having to do things like tie his shoes and help him up and help him bathe and all that, at that point you're already his caretaker, and at that point maybe he doesn't get a choice at that point because you're already his caretaker. But for an able-bodied man, there's a bit of a fine line that you're walking. So that would be my advice. Start with yourself, start making healthy meals and exercising and getting healthy yourself, and invite him to come along. And then you just don't enable bad habits. There are some other physical things. Those were the two biggest ones. There are some other physical things that can of course affect a man and how he acts and presents. Next big one would be stress. If you're a man is experiencing a lot of stress, maybe from work or family relationships or whatever, if he's experiencing a lot of stress, then of course that is going to affect how he acts. And if he's putting all of his energy into a stressful work project, then when he gets back to you, of course he's going to be drained, and you're not going to be getting masculine energy that you're maybe looking for because it's already been expended. In those cases, things you would maybe want to, instead of directly trying to tell him, you need to be more masculine, you need to do this, you need to do that, maybe attacking the stress levels. Try to, make things more relaxing for him when he gets home. Give him a little wind down time. Try and, do a 10-minute tidy before he comes home. It might not be completely clean, but maybe a 10-minute tidy, or, offer him a massage. Things like that. If you have kids and they're running wild, and of course you just want to pawn those kids off to him first things when he gets home, but maybe just keep them with you and try to keep the house as calm as possible for just like a half an hour so that he can wind down when he gets back. Listen to him vent. Those sorts of things to reduce like work stress. Or if it's family stress and he's trying to, referee family relationships, ask him if that's a job that he wants to do. And try not to like get in the middle of it yourself. He's not trying to referee you and his parents. So things like that. However you reduce stress, it's going to be dependent. It might be a little bit dependent on the situation, but if he is feeling stressed, then that is going to affect his energy levels and his leadership and his mood when he's at home with you. Another physical thing that can affect a man's alphaness would be sleep. If you are not getting good regular sleep, then that is going to affect how you act, your mood, your drive, all of that. Poor sleep can of course be caused by the stress. So if that's a contributing factor, then you can look at those ways to reduce stress. If he's, escaping into TV and video games to wind down all night and he loses track of time, then again, that's something that you maybe wouldn't necessarily want to be his mother and say, you can't do this, but control yourself. Say, I'm going to pass tonight on the movie marathon. I think I'm just going to turn in and go to bed, and start going to bed earlier yourself, and maybe he will join you. Try to make the bedroom a relaxing, sleep conducive place. So take out the TV. If that's something that he wouldn't be opposed to, get blackout blinds, things like that, to try and make it a sleep conducive place. A kind of specific stress that a lot of men experience would be money stressors. So if he's stressed about money, then if you can, try to keep within a budget, or if you have the time and expertise to do a side hustle, maybe you could start a small side hustle or something to kind of ease that burden, and not criticize him for how much, or how little, I should say, he makes, and just be appreciative of what he does bring in. Then that can help kind of lower those stress levels there. Last little area that I want to talk about would be his mental health. If he's experiencing anxiety or depression, then that is another thing that of course is going to affect his alphaness and his leadership and his overall masculinity. If there is an identifiable root cause to this anxiety and depression, then you can try and help support him and help him work through that. But sometimes there isn't, and so at that point, that would be something that you could encourage him to seek help from therapy, or if necessary, medications. Again, that's not something that you're maybe going to want to nag him about, but something to consider as you are trying to draw out the best qualities in him. That's something that you would not want to overlook. Besides these types of physical things that might be hindering his masculinity, there are other things that might be hindering him from embodying these best qualities. Are you a roadblock to the very thing that you desire? Sometimes we inadvertently turn ourselves into an obstacle to masculinity. So one thing that you can do if you want your man to be more alpha is to reflect on your own behavior. An example of this would be if you're very risk adverse and your man used to ride motorcycles. Maybe you were even attracted to that in the beginning, but now it's been a decade and you have kids and you say, I need a father for my kids. And so you pester him until he sells his motorcycles. And now he just sits around and watches TV during his spare time. Another example would be if your man wants to start some sort of business and you say, oh, that would be too much startup money, and what if we lose it all? We have no idea if this is going to be successful, and will that take too much time away from your job, and what if this and what if that? And it would just make it very unpleasant for him to pursue that purpose, because remember, men ultimately want to make us happy. Another example of this would be if you're very critical of your man. If you criticize the restaurant that he picked out, and then you come home and the next morning you criticize how he's folding laundry as he's practicing for a work presentation, telling him how to do his job. These sorts of things will give your man the feedback to kind of just hold back on being assertive, on taking initiative around you. If you want your man to be more masculine and you are guilty of these sorts of behaviors, maybe that's time to reel that in. If your man wants to ride a motorcycle, get long-term, short-term disability insurance, big life insurance plan, and then go with him to the Harley-Davidson store. If he wants to start a new business, then get on board and ask him practical steps. If you are someone who nags or criticizes a lot, then put on that duct tape, zip it up, throw away the key, and just let him be. Let him mop the floor before he swept it. Let him fold the towels into a square instead of into like the thirds. Just let him do it. Just zip it. Let him watch his sci-fi show. And those aren't important things. Those are the kind of things that are going to stand in the way of him wanting to take initiative around you. Next little thing that you'll want to take stock of in your own behavior, if you want your man to be more alpha, is, are you killing his snakes? If there is a snake in your house, let your husband kill the snake before you rush to kill it. And this doesn't mean that you are incapable of killing this snake or, sweeping him into a dustpan and releasing the snake outside. You probably could do that. But what you are doing, if you do that, when your man is present, is you are denying him an opportunity to be masculine and fulfill his masculine role. Hopefully you don't have a lot of loose snakes in your house. If you do, call an exterminator or something. But some common ways that women are killing their husband's snakes might be like getting tired of him doing his chores the wrong way or not doing them as quickly as you would want him to, and so you do them for him. Or becoming his personal assistant and running all his errands and, just becoming his personal assistant mommy, doing everything for him. Or you might even be like overstepping and getting into his actual work. So if you are in the example of chores, this is a very common one, so we'll use that. If your husband's chore is to wash the dishes because you cooked, so he's gonna wash the dishes. You guys have decided on this. After dinner, he, every night, instead of immediately going and doing the dishes, he says, I'm gonna relax. And so you get tired of nagging him about this, and you just start doing all the dishes for him. And then you also notice that he is folding the laundry wrong. You don't like how he folds the towels. Instead of nagging him about how he's folding the towels, so you start doing the towels for him. Maybe he is supposed to watch the kids on certain nights of the week, but you don't like the food that he feeds them, so you just stop going out on those nights. You are killing his snakes. And when you do this, you send a few different messages. You are sending the message that you believe he is incompetent. You believe he is unnecessary, and that you're more than happy to be taken advantage of. Maybe you do want to tell him that you think he's incompetent, but if your ultimate goal is to draw out his most masculine qualities, then maybe that is not the best idea. So what should you do instead? Because eating off of dirty dishes is disgusting because he's not doing them properly. What are you supposed to do besides doing them for him? Well, it might take coming together and saying, this isn't working, this chore isn't working, can we switch chores? Like, that might be an easy solution. But a lot of times it's just going to be letting there be natural consequences. So a natural consequence to not washing the dishes properly might be you just wash your own dish, and all the other dishes, he has to eat off crusty dishes every day, and that's unpleasant for him. Or if he's the one in charge of finances and he's constantly like late paying bills, then the power goes out, and that's not pleasant or fun for you, but he will learn eventually to start taking accountability. He's in charge of the outside chores, and it's his job to mow the lawn, and he doesn't do that, and the grass grows 3 feet, and he gets a citation from the city. Well, it's not pleasant for you to have to look at that unsightly grass every day, but eventually he'll learn. Now, I want there to be room for nuance here. This advice is intended for the habitually careless, lazy, distracted husband. If you have a husband who generally pulls his weight, but he's sick, then yes, you can take care of that bill and make sure that the bill gets paid while he's recovering from the flu or surgery or whatever. If you have guests coming in 20 minutes, then take out the trash, even if it's his job. If your man has been extra stressed because he has a temporary work project, then yeah, volunteer to take some of those chores off of his plate. This isn't you can never help your husband type thing. This is if your husband usually is not pulling his weight, he's not following through with what he says he's going to do, then let there be a natural consequence. Go along with this point, the next thing that you can do to help your man become more alpha, this goes along with our last point, hand in hand, is to let him fail. You are not his mommy helping him with his school science fair project, and you want to make sure he gets an A on it, and so you do all the work for him so it's the best science project ever. You wouldn't actually want to do that for your child, and you don't want to do that for your man. Sometimes your man is going to fail, especially if he has been unaccustomed to taking risks and unaccustomed to being assertive and unaccustomed to taking leadership and being decisive and all these things. If he's not accustomed to it, then he is probably going to have a few failures, and it might make you cringe to see that. It might hurt you to see him fail, but that is part of learning and that is part of growth. It's also hard for us to let this happen because sometimes this has real life consequences on us. If your man fails to pay the bills and your water gets cut off, then now you are deprived of your steaming hot shower. Maybe the poorly done chores are an affront to your senses. You can't stand seeing those towels folded the wrong way. And when he does make an unwise decision, it reflects poorly on us as his wife. So it can be very, very hard to let him make these failures. But if you want him to grow, then sometimes you just have to be accepting that he is not perfect and that he's still on his journey. So there will be some failures along the way. This doesn't mean that you can't support him. It doesn't mean that you can't encourage him or occasionally give warranted help. As in the last example, it's not never help him. It's don't do all of his work all the time for him. And so sometimes you are going to watch him fail. And really, like, that's okay. We fail all the time as women. Like, you wouldn't want to be constantly like reprimanded for burning dinner or reminded constantly of your weight or, micromanaged for your parenting skills. You wouldn't want that for yourself. So let's not treat our husbands that way, especially if your goal is to help him embody these more masculine qualities. Okay, our next point, we've talked a little bit about this. Talked about it when we talked about if your husband is overweight or if he has poor sleep habits. And the advice there was to first look at yourself and change yourself. So be the change that you want to see. Stop hyper-focusing and being so dissatisfied with your husband and blaming him for everything in your life that's not working. If there is something in your life that you're dissatisfied about, start making changes yourself. If you're unhappy with how you look, start exercising, start dressing better, learn some makeup techniques, learn some hairstyles. You can pick up new hobbies, start reading books, create systems in your home, and start developing habits that are going to make you more efficient in your duties. Work on your own character flaws and personal shortcomings. Stop focusing so much on what he is doing and hyperfixating on how dissatisfied you are with him and blaming him for all of the dissatisfaction that you have with your own life. Start taking charge there. Start taking some personal accountability and start changing for yourself. Start doing things that are going to make your life better for yourself. It could be that as you start taking leadership in your own life, that he might notice that and he might start to pick up some of his slack to keep up with you. Now you're going to want to be extra aware of that covert contract here. He might not start trying to get his own life in order to keep up with you, but it sometimes will help draw him out and, give him that little kick in the pants to say, hey, I need to start pulling some weight here, or she's going to leave me behind. A really fun thing that you can do if you want to encourage your man to be more alpha, to be more masculine, is to start highlighting your own femininity. The easiest way to begin this would be to start working on your outward appearance. Some of us would be delighted to wear frilly pink dresses and heels, but for some of us, that is not a look that we're really going for. And it's not a prerequisite to being feminine. I know that a lot of women, they hear people say, oh, I want to be more feminine, and that's immediately where their head goes. And if you want to do that, that's great. I love frilly pink dresses and heels and all that. But if that's just not you, that is not necessary to being feminine. But there are lots of different ways that you can dress to embody your own personal feminine style. A lot of people recommend the Kibbe system, Kibbe, and it helps you to identify clothing that is flattering for your particular body shape. That would be, in the shape of clothing and the texture and the flow and the pattern. It's very comprehensive. I think that honestly for me, I can't identify myself by the Kibbe system. It's super complicated and I have never been able to wrap my head around it personally. But if you are able to wrap your head around it, then that is something that a lot of women have found helpful. If you're like me and you're just a lost cause, then just look for influencers who have a similar body shape and aesthetic to what you're trying to achieve, and that can give you a lot of inspiration. And it's going to probably take a bit of experimenting to find out what clothes look flattering on you and what colors look flattering on you, but it can be a fun process as well. I think it's a fun process. As you are trying to up your femininity, other areas that you can focus on besides clothing would be things like your makeup, finding some simple hairstyles that are flattering, your nails, your skincare, things like that. That can really help bring you into feeling like a more feminine person. Perfume. A few pitfalls as you start doing this. If your goal is to be more feminine, then you might want to avoid overly baggy, shapeless, androgynous fits. That is a style for a lot of people, and a lot of people enjoy it, and so there's nothing wrong with that style. But if your goal is to be more feminine and to highlight your femininity, that you might want to look for clothing that is more form-fitting in your best areas. Another word of advice is that you don't necessarily need to be hyper-revealing or hypersexual as you do this to try to get his attention. A good rule of thumb is if you are revealing skin in one area to maybe have other areas covered. Our next word of caution as you are learning to dress more femininely would be to dress for the body that you have, not your dream body. I know that sometimes there is this temptation you get in your head that what your dream wardrobe would be, and you envision yourself in your head as you want to be, but that might not reflect the current state of your figure and the things that might be flattering on you at your peak might not necessarily be flattering on you right now. And you can always buy more clothes as you get to that point and dress more like this idealized version of yourself as you get to that point. But in the present, you will want to consider dressing in the way that is most flattering for the you now. A last word of caution when it comes to dressing is to just develop situational awareness. If you are out on a hot date with your husband, or you are going to the beach, that yes, you might be able to show more skin and wear something more revealing. If you're going to somewhere where there's going to be a lot of families, or you're going to church or something, then you will want to be more covered. If you are going to church or to a professional event, then you will want to dress more professionally and conservatively. Whereas if you're going to hang out at a mom's group, then you can get away with dressing more casually. So just having a little bit of situational awareness is also always a good thing to consider when dressing. Now, I think that these kind of outward things are amazing for helping us to build our confidence and helping to drag us into the feminine. Doing your nails and doing your hair and doing your makeup can really help you get into the spirit of being feminine. But if your outward appearance does not match your inner self, then your husband is going to very quickly notice that your exterior does not match your interior. If you're still nagging at your husband or being critical or using very crude language all the time, then your husband is going to notice that the changes that you've made are superficial and that your demeanor does not match your exterior. Beauty is skin deep, but femininity is something that you can seek to embody more fully to your core. Work on becoming confident and self-assured. Speak kindly of others. Extend generosity and compassion to others. Develop patience and compassion. Seek to be virtuous and upstanding in your interactions with others. These sorts of things are going to show that you are not just changing how you look, but that you are making improvements inward to your whole being. Common examples of places that might need improvement if you are trying to work on being more feminine would be gossip, or if you're involved in a lot of drama, if you're a very crude person, if you are very impatient with your husband and children, or being unforgiving of minor personality flaws. These are areas that if you work on them, then it will help you be more feminine, not only in your outward appearance, but in your interactions and who you are. And it will help you to really embody femininity as a whole. My next very, very crazy out there way for you to help your man embody masculinity is to practice submission. I know it sounds out there, especially if your man does seem incapable of doing like simple chores, or if he isn't much of a leader and he defers to you for every decision. This might seem like really crazy to try to practice submission, but hear me out. I made a video on submission just to like be clear about what we're talking about. If submission sounds like a dirty word to you, then you might like just go check out that video first before you make any judgments. Put it succinctly, what I am talking about when I'm talking about submission is the voluntary action of stepping into your man's frame and following his lead. When talking about practicing submitting to a man, even if he is not a hyper-masculine man, one thing to recognize is that sometimes we get into habits with our spouses. He does one thing and you react that way and he reacts back. And so we get into this kind of cycle and it turns into like a sort of chicken and egg scenario. And so if you want to reset things, then you'll want to go back to where you want things to eventually be. And if you want your man to be a leader, then I would assume that you are not here to turn him into a leader just so that you can fight him. That you want him to be a leader who inspires you to follow him. And so to get him to that point, one thing that you can do is start following him. If he tries to take the lead on something, stop fighting with him about it. Stop telling him how what he wants to do is wrong. And this might start out small. Start with small things if you're uncomfortable with this. Start with letting him pick out the TV show or pick out the restaurant that you're going to. You might want to watch a rom-com, but let him pick out the show without complaint. Say, you know what? I wasn't in the mood for that show. I didn't think I would like it, but I actually really enjoyed the show that you picked out. Or if you want Chinese and he wants Mexican, just go eat some Mexican food. It's cheesy and delicious. You'll have a good time. Just go with the flow there. If you are annoyed by your man's lack of leadership, then this is a very, very low risk way to allow him to practice making decisions and being a leader. Because just like submission is something that takes practice, being a leader is something that takes practice. If you want him to be a leader, then he needs to practice that. So give him the opportunity to practice. Be willing to follow his lead on these little things. And then when the world doesn't crumble, when you go to a different restaurant than you wanted, then you can start to follow him in bigger things. Another thing that you can do if you're trying to encourage leadership is to ask him his opinion about something. Make sure that it's something that you're willing to follow what he says. But if you want him to be a leader, then ask him an opinion about something. What color should we paint the walls? I'm stuck between these 3 colors. What do you think? And then just make, you kind of like all 3 colors. Let him pick and then just go with the one that he says, right? If there's something pretty low stakes that doesn't really matter, that you guys have been fighting over, a stupid little argument, like recognize that maybe it's a low stakes scenario and do things his way. Say, hey, you know what, hon? I have been thinking about it. I think you're right. I think we should go with Progressive instead of Geico. Let him win. If you want your man to be a leader, give him some wins. If you want your man to be a leader, if he asks you to make a sandwich and you at all have the time and capacity to do it, then go ahead and make the sandwich. Give him practice being assertive with his desires. These things are so low stakes, but if he's a man who's been beaten down by you or just by life in general, and he's lacking confidence to be decisive and make decisions and take leadership, then these little things can help to build his confidence back up. And then hopefully you'll get to a place where he has confidence and you have more trust in him. And so you can follow him, you can follow his lead and be submissive about the bigger things too. Okay, my last little piece of advice, if you are someone seeking to make your man more alpha, seeking to make him more masculine or have more leadership, seeking to make your man more assertive, all of these things, my last piece of advice would be to show some gratitude. Hopefully your man is not a complete loser and has some redeeming qualities. Look for those qualities, embrace those qualities, be grateful for those qualities. Tell him how much you love those qualities. That can help bolster his confidence, some heartfelt appreciation. And the other thing that this will do, being grateful, is remember how we talked about not all men have the capacity to be 100% alpha. Not all men want to be 100% alpha. If you are focusing on being grateful and on his better qualities, then those things that you're dissatisfied with will kind of be diminished in your mind, which is a good thing. You want to be happy and pleased with who you are married to. Be patient with who your husband is, who he wants to be, and gratitude will, I think, go a long way in making him feel appreciated and helping you to be genuinely appreciative of what you have. Maybe you will even, as you go through these things, recognize that he does have some leadership qualities and he is masculine. So ending on that note, that is my advice. If you want to make your man more masculine, if you want to have an assertive, dominant alpha male, those are the things that I would start with to try to help encourage those qualities. And some of you might have some other tips that helped you, but that is what I think that I would start with. Thank you for watching. Bye.